Right, I want to talk you through, if I can keep this camera straight, how I now deal with stress. Because I've been experiencing it today, because I've been doing a case file, and any detective will sort of appreciate this when you've got a job that's particularly old. This one's 2.5 years, you've been doing lots of other things, and then you come back and you go, right, I've got to do this case file. And suddenly you've got to go back all over this stuff. There's sort of bits everywhere, lots of entries on your crime report. I've got in excess of 200. And then you've got all these sort of bits everywhere. And when you start coming to look at it, you think, oh, something else I haven't done. Oh, something else I haven't done. And even though all the work I've done with the coaching, I noticed today this sense of panic coming up. And I noticed I was getting really quite unproductive. I was spinning, and what I was trying to do was I was looking at one document. I was trying to sort of merge these documents, places I'd recorded information. I was trying to merge that information into the document that we're going to send to the CPS, the CMO1. And I was just sort of stuck on it. I just couldn't think clearly. And what I want to do is run you through how the self-coaching works, because when I work with people, not only do I coach them, but I teach them how to self-coach. And this is really important because we're not ever going to eliminate negative thinking. Our brain is designed for survival, so we're not going to eliminate it, but we have to learn to overcome it. And to overcome doesn't mean to eliminate. Overcome means to deal with. So you got to accept that your brain is always going to anticipate danger and try and move you away from it. And actually, when we fight that, which is what I found I was doing today, when we resist it, we add even more pressure and more tension. Because now we're feeling a bit of stress, we think it comes from the work, and then we think, oh, we don't want to feel that stress, and then we add even more tension to it, and it feels even worse. And now this work feels even harder, and now we're not so productive, that deadline's looming, and so it then feels even worse. So of course, and what we often do in those times is we try and work harder, we try and work our way out of it, and I have found that is not the answer. And you may think that's a strange answer, you think, well, actually you've got to get this work done, but taking some time to get clarity of what the actual problem is can change everything. And this is what it's about, really. It's not about eliminating yourself. It's not about eliminating the stress. It's about reducing the time that you spend in it. Because small amounts of stress don't cause you any harm. It's the long periods of time that we spend in it, and the times we spend worrying and feeling overwhelmed and not switching off. Not only is it not very healthy, but also it's exhausting. Like, you can actually produce a lot of work and do a lot of work without really getting that tired, without getting that exhausted. But when you're spinning, you're doing it from a state of stress and overwhelm, you can feel really exhausted. And I always say, burnout doesn't come from the amount of work you do, it comes from the energy that you're approaching it from. So let me run you through what I did. So today I was doing this and doing this work, and I could feel this sort of stress. So then this evening I just sort of sat down and I went, right, to find out what was going on. So when I start this job again, I can approach it very differently. And to do that, what I do is I write down all my thoughts on paper, because this stress comes from the brain. Because another day, this may not bother me, and I bet you I'll go back into work on Wednesday and I'll just fly through this work, and the work wouldn't have changed. But of course, in those moments, we obviously think it's the work that's causing the problem. So what we want to do is get down everything we're thinking on paper, call it a thought download. And that's what I did. I wrote it down. It's like loads of ramblings. And then you go back and you read through it. And then what you do is you go through and you just circle the facts you got, and you just write down what are the facts. And it's really important to separate out what is fact and what is thought, which is what is story, because we have the facts of the situation, so what everyone would agree on, and then we have the story that our brain adds to it. Our brain has a constant narrative, and it's that narrative that causes the problem. It's the meaning that our brain gives to it, because our brain is very sort of primitive survival based, as I said, and it often predicts the worst case scenario story, trying to protect us, but causing more of the same problem. So by writing all the thoughts down, what you get is you can then see it. You become the observer of your mind. You become the watcher. And you want to do this without any judgment. You don't want to add any judgment to it. You want to do this with real curiosity and compassion. So I wrote it all down. And what I could see is this repetitive thing of this thought, it's taking too long. It's taking too long. And that sort of comes from this belief that I'm not quick enough. And that's something I'm working on. I'm going to talk about that in other videos. But basically, it was this, it's taking too long. So what I did was I then separated out what was fact and what was thought. And I write down all the facts. And the facts are the date that the investigation come in, how long the investigation is, the documents that I've got. And it's all very bland. And when you write down just the facts, you'll find your brain will want to go to the story. Oh, but it's taking too long. Oh, it's a nightmare. It shouldn't be this long, this, all that. And that's what causes the tension. But you stick with just the facts. And then you read those facts through and see how they feel. And what you'll find is when you repeat just the facts, it's very neutral. It doesn't really have an effect on you, which shows it's not the job that's creating that sort of stress and pressure in us. It's our brain, it's when our brain gives it meaning. And then what happened was the same thought kept popping up for me. And that thought was, it's taking too long. It's taking too long. So then I use what we call the self-coaching model to see what that creates for me. And it's really interesting because there was a time today when I remember thinking that it's taken too long and I felt this panic. But what I do is when I thought it's taken too long and I felt panic, what I did was I would skim read, I would flip from one to the other. My head would go straight to the future because it thinks I'm taking too long. It would catastrophize. It would also think about all the work that I wasn't doing. And then it'd be thinking about what my sergeant would be saying when he finds out that this, the work isn't done in the time that I think it should be done. And then you can see that in that moment when I take that action, the work actually takes longer. And this is really important to see because what we think becomes reality. This is something I've seen so much, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so when I'm thinking it's taking too long, what happens is it actually takes longer. And it's that is the problem, not the case I'm working on. Because if I wasn't thinking it was taking too long, I'd just be getting on with it. And this is what I've come to realize is a lot of our problem is our expectation of what we can achieve. And we overestimate what we can do in the short term and we underestimate what we can do in the long term. So in other words, we try and cram loads into the long term and then we sort of beat ourselves up. But then actually, if we reduce our expectation of what we can do and do it from a non-stressed place, we actually end up doing more. So you think if I'm doing this thinking I've got to get this whole case file done today and I'm stressed and overwhelmed and I don't get hardly anything done, whereas if I was really focused on just getting one bit done, I would actually have got more done. And you've got to be kind to yourself because this is the thing. If you think of yourself as you're the boss and you're the employee, if you got the boss, if your boss was telling you had to get all this work done and then was berating you when you were getting stressed and you couldn't do it, that relationship you have with your boss is terrible. But this is what we do with ourselves. We're setting an expectation of what we want to do. So that's the boss inside of us. Then the worker inside of us starts to do the work. But then they find out they can't do it because the expectation is too high. And then we end up sort of having this internal battle with ourselves. And it's just depleted because we're sort of, we start thinking, why can't we get it done? We're too slow. We don't work fast enough and all this. And this is what the self-coaching helps you see. It helps you see that actually the work we're doing is not the problem. It's the way we're thinking about it. It's this expectation that we hold. And even though this expectation seems really sort of noble, what it's doing is making us work slower. And then what you do is you become aware of this thinking. This is a really important part because I can guarantee when you see it, you'll see it comes up in all areas of your life. So this thing of, I'm not working quick enough, it's not, it's taking too long. That shows up in all areas of my life. I'm someone that wants to rush stuff. And when things do take longer, I then think, it's what I want to do in the quick things. But when you come to those things that take time, I start then beating myself up and it takes longer. But like you say, it's not the work that's causing that. It's this belief that I hold, that it's taken too long. So then I know now that the work is not a problem. And this enables me to do a really key thing and switch off. Because we often think it's the work that stops us switching off. But I'm going into rest days now. And if I think it's the work, what I do is I find I have this desire, this urge to flip over my laptop and start working. I really had that. I thought I'm going to work tonight on it so I can get it done, so I can switch off. But actually that's going to have me probably more tired and not resting. And that's really what I need to do to be productive. So what I do is, now I'm aware that it's this thought that's the problem, this thinking that's the issue. I can just be aware of that. And every time that pops up, I can realize that that's just my brain trying to warn me of danger. Because that thought, what does it do? It protects me from. But if it thinks it's going to take too long, it's because it's worried about some sort of judgment about what people are going to think of me. But what it does, it has me trying to work when I should be resting. And then when I am actually working, because I'm thinking that I'm rushing, I'm not productive. So all I got to do now to be able to switch off is I just focus, be very present. And every time my brain wanders, so it's like, you think it's like a toddler, every time it wanders off and starts thinking about work, thinking, oh, I need to be getting that done, it's taking too long, I just bring it back. And I notice it, thank my brain for trying to protect me, just trying to warn me, but I go, it's no danger at all. It's like a dog barking at the door. It's not a burglar, it's the postman. It's fine. And then what happens is, because I then don't respond to that, and I don't flip open the laptop and start working, eventually that weakens, because I have this thought that creates this feeling, but I don't respond to it. And then you break the habit, and over time you can start learning to switch off. And this is key, because if you keep responding to it, then you're going to have this cycle of where you can never switch off, and there's always a case file to do. It's always this. And then when I go back to work, I'm now aware of this thought, and every time it comes up, I can be, that's fine. I know it's me creating it, and I can get on with the work. And then what you do is, once you've done that sort of stage, then you start thinking, what do I have to be thinking to get this done? And a great way to do that is to go, what would my future self tell me? The future self who's got this work done, what would they tell me? And it's simple. Break it down to small steps, actually break down and see how long each thing's realistically going to take, set that time in, set a timer, make sure you're rested before you start, factor in time for breaks, and remove all distractions. And suddenly you think, when you think that, you think, this is done. That creates a very different emotion in me. Even when I say that now, this is done, that makes me feel accomplished already. It makes me feel motivated. And then it goes, right, now I'm ready. And it makes me feel clear-headed. And this is the power of self-coaching. It doesn't matter that you go to this place of stress, because you can get yourself out of it. And this is how you prevent burnout. You don't have to keep removing yourself from the job, because you know that actually it's you that's causing the stress, and so you can handle it. So that's my tips for you today. Just at a minimum, just write down what's going on for yourself, separate out what is thought and what is fact. And just remember, a fact is everything that everyone would agree on. It is literally the raw data. And that's often the bit people get trouble with. So if you do get trouble with it, please get in touch, just let me know. Or if you do it and you try it and you want me to look over it, send it in, and then I'll give you some feedback on whether what you're thinking is a thought is actually a fact. Because learning that part can get you such a separation, and it can give your brain that space and time and that clarity to actually be able to observe what's going on for you and find the real problem. But I thought I'd share that with you, because it just goes to show we're all human. We all go there. Stress is normal. Our brain we're not going to overcome it. Our brain, we're not going to eliminate it. Our brain is designed to predict the worst case scenario. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to believe it. So we want to become the watcher of that brain and start watching it, see what it's creating, and then decide whether we want to change it. That's it for me today. Take it steady. Speak to you later. Bye-bye.